having to replace the internal combustion engine with something fueled by something else, whether it's hydrogen fuel cells or electricity or whatever else. Is there something standing in the way besides political will in the manufacturing process?
Yes, I think there is a technology problem that hasn't been solved, and that is, in simple terms, a battery that can hold enough charge so that an individual could drive for 300 or 400 miles. We just do not have that technology available yet. People are working on it, but as of now, the approximate range for electric cars is about 100 miles.
And this would make them, I guess, for the average Americans driving at the best, inconvenient.
It would be just a commuter car. And I think very few Americans would be willing to spend $20,000, $30,000 for a car that only could be used in the city. I think we also have, coming on the market this year, these plug-in hybrids. I would call this an intermediate technology. It uses electricity for commuting, but then it uses gasoline for longer trips. And I think the major drawback with that technology is that it'll be quite expensive. I'm thinking about, in particular, the General Motors Volt that I think is expected on the market by the end of this year. No one's exactly sure what it'll be priced at, but the numbers I've heard are around $40,000.
Ouch.
Yes, that's...
I mean, it seems to me that with the technological problem of the battery, you also have price points that are just unrealistic. I mean, if you want the average person to get off petroleum and you want to be able to transport goods, you're going to need an electrical or a, hydrogen fuel cell or some kind of vehicle that can go for long distances and that is not going to cost a king's ransom.
That's exactly right. And that's why you're not seeing them on the market yet.
Because it's just not, the technology is just not there?
That's correct.
What about hydrogen fuel cells? What are they? What are their advantages, but what are their drawbacks?
The advantages is that they don't use petroleum. They're primarily, they use hydrogen gas as a fuel, but the hydrogen gas is what's called an intermediate fuel. It has to be produced from some primary fuel, and right now that primary fuel is natural gas. I think that there are a number of major drawbacks with the hydrogen technology, but I think, again, the most important one is probably the price tag. You're, again, looking at an automobile that is at a minimum $50,000 to $100,000.
Now, with your years of research and looking at this from a physicist's point of view, in terms of the research that's going on, has it been a matter, in your view, that there are just simple physical laws in terms of a high-storage battery that are very difficult to overcome, or has it been a matter that's more commercial? That is, people have figured, well, why spend the money for this research when we don't think there's enough of a market there? In other words, is it a human problem that, well, we could do it if we spend enough money, but we really don't want to, or wait a minute, there's some basic laws of physics that we have to overcome?
As far as I know, there are no basic laws of physics that are violated by having a more compact battery. I think it's a technological problem. We need a breakthrough. We need a new idea, a new way of doing things. And so far, no one's come up with that. There has been a tremendous amount of research. I think all the automobile companies have major efforts in battery technology. The government is spending a tremendous amount of money on this technology. It's just one tough problem.
Yeah, and because of that tough problem, I would take it for the foreseeable future that we're either going to, if one wanted to do a little better by the environment and reduce dependence on oil, what you'd have to do is either get a smaller internal combustion engine or maybe go with one of these bridge technologies, like it's got an engine and an electric motor, the hybrids.
For example, like the hybrid automobiles, I think is a very attractive intermediate technology. I mean, it's an affordable automobile, and it uses significantly less gasoline than your ordinary automobile. The other technology that is popular in Europe, but not yet in the United States, are diesel automobiles. They get about 30% better miles per gallon.
Now, I understand the downside to that is, at least in the past, diesel was a good deal more polluting than the regular gasoline.
That has changed now. There is now new technology plus low-sulfur diesel fuel that has been mandated by the government and is now in the gasoline stations. So your old image of diesel really is an obsolete image. It is now meets the pollution standards that ordinary automobiles have to meet.
Now, we had talked about hydrogen cell or electric for personal passenger vehicles. When it comes to the larger scale things, whether it's train engines, large truck engines, or jet engines that are used to transport large numbers of people or large amounts of goods to keep the economy running, where's the degree of difficulty there? In other words, if you can put a small electric vehicle in your car, but what about a large truck, a train, a jet engine? Is there anything down the pipe to possibly wean us off petroleum when it comes to those, or are we stuck with what we've got for right now?
I think we're stuck. I've not heard anything that comes even close to attacking or addressing that issue. No, we have built a society based on cheap gasoline, okay? And it is a very convenient society. I mean, it is a pleasure. We sort of take it for granted, driving an automobile or getting on a plane or having goods shipped thousands of miles to our stores and homes. It makes for a wonderful life, but it is a very energy-intensive society, one based on usage of a tremendous amount of fossil fuels.
And relatively inexpensive fossil fuels.
Absolutely. That's what makes it all happen.
So I guess the whole idea it goes back to not necessarily physics, but economics. Once the fossil fuels reach a price point that people find shocking, then maybe you get wholesale research into this sort of stuff.
Yes, and the other hope is that maybe you'll also get sort of changes in people's behavior. Let me throw out a wild and crazy idea. It's a very, very old technology, but it's actually a very attractive one, and that's riding a bicycle. It does not use any fossil fuels, and it's actually healthy for you. And I think if people would get in the habit of living close to where they work or close to where they shop, it would make a tremendous difference in the amount of gasoline that we use in our society.
So, Professor Feldman, a final question then. So the problem would seem to be not necessarily that basic laws of physics are at work here that we can't overcome.
That's correct.
It's twofold. Number one, you're looking for a battery that will store enough juice to keep things rolling for a long period of time. Actually, three things. Number two, we don't have anything like that right now for larger vehicles, trucks, trains, jet planes. And number three, when it comes to personal use, the problem isn't so much technological. The problem is us.
Correct. I guess I'd leave you with one final thought, and that is maybe we shouldn't think in terms of a solution to the big problem. Maybe we should approach it as incrementally. Let's see if we can reduce our gasoline usage by 1% a year or 2% a year. And maybe we as individuals and our lifestyles can slowly change our lifestyles to use less energy. I think if we try to tackle it, percent at a time, incrementally, I think that's probably a better approach, because that will buy us time for these new technologies hopefully to come online that are both affordable and are more energy efficient and use less fossil fuels.
Professor Bernard Feldman, physicist, Department of Physics and Astronomy up at UMSL, has done a lot of research into how automobile engines operate, alternatives to them, and there you have it. The technology just ain't there yet, and the political and personal will isn't there yet either. Professor Feldman, a pleasure as always. Thank you for your time this morning, sir.
My pleasure.